Tonight, a red-hot court case from this summer, the so-called Black Swan. Was it murder or was it self-defense?
David, I have the exclusive interview with the ballerina at the center of it all. Not on stage, but on trial for murder. An all-new 2020 begins right now.
I was living a nightmare. At home. It was terrifying. It was like two different people, and I never knew which Doug I was gonna get.
You're 24, he's 54. Were you worried about her connecting with this guy who's so much older?
Things didn't start off well. It was like, oh yeah, Eva, this is my new wife.
I felt like Ashley was taking my dad away from me.
It was all a masquerade. I mean, can I straight up say that? Doug was not who he portrayed himself to be.
That was sort of like, what's going on?
So you're thinking that your husband, the man who loved you and seemed to adore you, would poison you?
I read the allegations and I thought, oh my God, this is crazy. Doug never poisoned Ashley.
Is it possible that maybe you just imagined this?
Maybe it was all in my head.
But you know now that this sounds pretty dysfunctional.
Doug, what are you doing? She tried to ruin your life. I don't think he could have ever guessed what was going to happen to him.
I've never been so scared in my life.
Growing up, Ashley Benefield wanted nothing more than to become a world-class ballerina. She never dreamed that one day she'd be wearing a court-ordered ankle bracelet along with her pointe shoes.
Main County 911. What is the emergency?
Okay, it's right next door to me. She came in. She was quite hysterical. She said that he attacked her and she shot him.
Where's the...
I have it right here, ma'am. It's sitting on the floor. Where in the house is he?
Deputies are moving as fast as they're him.
A normally quiet Lakewood Ranch neighborhood turned into a bloody crime scene.
Was it murder or self-defense?
It's a story with a lot of twists and turns. The 32-year-old former ballerina alleging he attacked her in her home and that she fired back multiple times in self-defense.
Miss Benefield was in great fear of immediate and severe bodily harm.
A woman out on bond still awaiting her fate.
So many law enforcement officials said, no, this isn't adding up.
Former ballerina at the center of the so-called Black Swan murder trial. Only two people know exactly what happened. One of them is a suspect for second-degree murder. The other is dead.
Until now, Ashley has remained silent about the night of the shooting, about what happened in that house in this Florida community. But tonight, in her first interview, Ashley Benefield tells her story.
Hey
there. Your first time doing this, so here we go. Let's go back to your life in the beginning. You wanted to be a ballet dancer?
Yeah, actually I started when I was 8. A family member was dancing on Broadway, and I was very inspired by her and what she was doing.
And what was it about ballet that captivated you?
It's complex. It's something that is beautiful and powerful, but at the same time, there's a lot of control and you have to be reserved. I think it's just the kind of dynamic of all of the things combined.
Ashley grew up in Maryland as an only child. Her mom, Alicia Byers, says they had a special bond. Your marriage dissolved, you split up with her father, and you raised her as a single mom.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like for the two of you?
At first it was an adjustment, but, we did well. We're very close. She was blessed with a lot of talents. And so it was a real joy raising her.
And at some point she becomes smitten with ballet.
Very, yes. She got to the point where she did it 7 days a week.
I was training during the day, all day. It was an everyday, all day thing.
She soon learns that it takes more than ability alone to make it as a professional dancer. Ashley's 5'9" and considered by most ballet companies to be too tall, something no amount of training can overcome.
There are height ranges in companies. A lot of that is because of partnering and complications that can arise if you're not well matched height-wise.
The ballet world tends to be kind of cookie cutter. It was hard finding a good fit for a company.
With her height and then a hamstring injury holding her back, Ashley decides to hang up her pointe shoes in her early 20s. You begin to shift your focus a little bit. In 2016, you became captivated by politics. What led you to the Trump campaign?
Well, I'd actually always been interested in politics. I wasn't looking for it. The opportunity came up, and I was just finishing up with one chapter of my life, and it seemed like the right thing to do, so I jumped in.
Ashley's job for the Trump campaign was to go to rallies, and she would rile up the crowd, pray with the crowd. You could actually see videos of her online. She thought she was going to be part of the Trump team.
In her diary entries from this time, Ashley says she felt a special bond with candidate Trump. She writes, "We got to the plane early and waited for Mr. Trump to arrive." Ashley writes about her hopes for her future. She writes kind of a plea to God. "I want to be a wife and mother. Please bring me to that special man you've chosen for me."
Ashley wanted children. She wanted a family. She prayed that God would bring her a man to be with her. She made it clear in the diary what her plan was.
In August of 2016, in the thick of the campaign, her prayers seemed to be answered while attending a fundraiser at Dr. Ben Carson's home in Palm Beach, Florida. At some point, you meet a man named Doug Benefield.
Yes.
What did you think of him?
He was charming. Very funny. Really smart. Confident, but quiet. We were there for political reasons. But then also he was a man of faith, shared similar interests.
Those common interests included politics, God, and guns.
First night that Doug and Ashley met, Ashley had a gun in her bra. Doug, who has a military background, he thought, wow, look at this girl. Like, she's strong and she's powerful and she's, not afraid of weapons, and everything about her was just great.
He nicknamed you Ashley Oakley.
Yeah, we both had very strong opinions about the Second Amendment. That was something we bonded over. I had a concealed carry permit. You wanted to be a responsible gun owner. We talked the whole night. When the evening was over and everyone was leaving, we were texting and up till 3 o'clock in the morning. It just seemed like I had met my soulmate. We were like the perfect match. He kind of swept me off my feet. It was like a whirlwind. I think it was about 4 days in when he first told me he loved me.
4 days? That's quick.
Yeah, it was quick.
Something else Ashley says didn't bother her was the couple's significant age difference. You're 24. He's 54.
Yeah.
You're a young woman. Suddenly you're being romanced by this 54-year-old man. Did anybody in your life say, slow down, Ashley?
No, it just kind of happened.
But the bliss wouldn't last. Ashley learns that the man she's falling for has been married before.
Nothing was adding up. The more I tried to figure things out, the more the story changed.
And she says she begins uncovering secrets, leading her to wonder just who Doug Benefield really is. In the summer of 2016, 24-year-old Ashley Benefield is on the road stumping for Donald Trump when she finds romance at a Palm Beach fundraiser. Did sparks begin to fly between you two?
It was like an instant connection, yeah. We both had that evangelical background, so we spent a lot of time talking about that.
Doug Benefield grew up in a Baptist family, the middle of 3 sons, with a stay-at-home mom and a father who worked as a scientist at NASA.
Doug graduated from high school in Huntsville, Alabama. He was a top wrestler in the state. He decided to follow his father and our family to Texas A&M.
After graduating from college, Doug joins the U.S. Navy in Pensacola. He rises through the ranks quickly, and the Navy assigns Doug to a position in Charleston, South Carolina.
While he's working for the Defense Intelligence Agency, he gets involved in renovations of old historic buildings with people that he meets in Charleston.
Doug started up businesses here, a restaurant, some other things. He had a group of friends and colleagues.
He loved it there. And one of those locations that he most loved was out on Sullivan's Island. Doug found a small hole-in-the-wall Irish pub called Dunlevy's Pub. That same Irish pub is where he meets his wife, Renee.
If someone were to ask me to sum up Renee in a few sentences, it'd be very difficult. She's stunning beautiful but doesn't know it, and loves to make people laugh.
Doug has a pretty quick courtship with a woman named Renee Kauser. They marry, and in 2001, their daughter Eva is born.
My mom was the sweetest, happiest woman you would ever meet. She was an angel walking on earth. She was never, ever, ever in a bad mood. She loved everybody.
Doug's marriage to Renee, by all accounts, was a happy marriage. Of course, ups and downs, but generally a happy marriage.
Doug and Renee and Eva together are just this triad. They're just three together all the time. You never saw them apart. Happy, beautiful family.
But when Eva is just 14, the happy family suffers a devastating loss.
I was waiting in the pickup line outside of my school, and she wasn't there. And I went home, and nobody was answering the doorbell. I didn't have my key, and my mom wasn't answering her texts.
Eva called and said, I can't get a hold of my mom, and Dad's in Dallas, and so I get on the phone with Doug.
Doug asks Melody for help. Her husband goes next door and breaks into the house to find Renee unresponsive, face down on her bed.
I just remember going back out on the porch and seeing my neighbor's face, and he shook his head, and I knew that she just wasn't there anymore. She passed of an underlying heart condition. It was shocking.
An autopsy reveals that Renee died of natural causes.
He tried to stay really strong for me, and I never really saw him break down from it. It was different. It was quiet in the house. It was just different.
Then, just 9 short months after her mother's passing, Eva meets a new woman in her father's life, Ashley Benefield.
I heard about her on a Friday. I met her the following Saturday, and then Sunday, I was up in my room, and my dad came upstairs, and he said, Eva, we need to have a conversation, all three of us. And I said, no, I think the only thing that I would be interested in hearing is if you told me that you proposed to her. And as soon as those words came out of my mouth, he said, we're married. Yeah, it was a lot.
Eva's not the only one blindsided by the quick marriage, which happened at a secret ceremony just 13 days after Doug and Ashley met.
First time I hear anything about Ashley is they're married and she's already moved in to Doug's home in Mount Pleasant.
How did he propose? Was this a formal get on his knee and propose to you? How did that happen?
It was more of like, hey, we should just do this. Like, let's get married. And I was like, oh, yeah, okay.
They move very quickly, and before you know it, they're engaged and married.
Yeah, it was like, whoa.
What was your wedding like?
It was small. It was just me and Doug and 2 of his friends.
So suddenly you're Mrs. Benefield.
Yep.
Were you happy?
I was thrilled. Yeah, I felt like I had finally met my soulmate. I think a lot of it had to do with Eva. He really sold me on the fact that she needed a mommy person to be there, and I guess I felt needed and wanted.
But Eva, still grieving the loss of her mom, says she neither wanted nor needed a stepmom, especially one so close to her in age.
The age difference between me and Ashley is 8 years. Anytime I hung out with her and we were shopping downtown, we would get mistaken as sisters.
How did you get along with Eva?
I think things didn't start off well because she didn't really find out until after we were married. It was like, oh yeah, Eva, this is my new wife. And it didn't go over well.
I will just say this. He messed up. He messed up by jumping in to a relationship and not inviting his daughter into it. That was, I think, a huge mistake.
My dad seemed very excited and happy, and I also understood that he was grieving differently than me.
Ashley and Doug are moving full steam ahead. They don't just want a romantic partnership, they want to be business partners.
It seemed like we found something once again that we were both equally passionate about, so we just hit the ground running.
But what Ashley and Doug don't realize is that both the romance and the business will soon self-destruct.
You can't make promises and not live up to them.
Like, it's going People were mad.
I found out that it was all a masquerade.
My name is Sarah Muraski. When I was a young girl, I saw a performance of The Nutcracker, and I fell in love with it right away. I knew right in that moment that's what I wanted to do with my life.
After years of sacrifice and dedication, Sarah finally gets her big break. She's cast in the Pennsylvania Ballet's production of The Nutcracker, in the lead role, the Sugar Plum Fairy.
It was like it was a fairy tale in a way. In that moment of my life, it was everything I could have dreamed up.
But Sarah says one night backstage, her dream is unexpectedly shattered. She's told the company is going in another direction.
The director took me aside and said, "You're too tall." For me to even think that it was done was unimaginable after sacrificing my whole life for this moment, for this career. It was a few months after that I received a message online from Ashley Benefield.
Ashley says she and Doug were talking one night when they had the idea to start a ballet company that would include all kinds of dancers.
I was a tall dancer. I'm just a tall person, I guess. I just been talking about how there were things in the ballet world that I didn't think were right. And that, well, you know, if it was up to me, I would do it differently. And he was like, well, why don't we do it?
Ashley called me. We spoke. I remember her saying things like, I want to make a change for ballet. I want ballet to be able to show its beauty in the best way with all different kinds of dancers.
The concept was diversity. I trained with beautiful dancers of all shapes, sizes, colors, backgrounds, you name it, and I watched them have a hard time getting a job. I was frustrated by that.
You came up with the name for it, American National Ballet.
Yep.
So he was going to handle the business part, and you would be more creative.
Yep. Doug had done a lot of fundraising for different companies, for a lot of these kind of up-and-coming tech companies. And I remember him being like, oh, tech companies and ballet, I'm sure we can, fundraise for both.
Doug sat down with me and directly asked me, I want you to work with Ashley. You know what you're doing to help get the basics of the company started.
He said they were doing a ballet company, and I'd come home from school and Ashley was in the dining room with headshots laid out, sticky notes everywhere.
When I was originally brought in, Ashley had already hired, there were 50 dancers in the company, which surprised me, because when you're first starting out, that's an awful lot of money that's going out, and you don't have any money coming in yet.
That was sort of like, what's going on? It just seemed like a lot for a company that was starting out, and that maybe they were biting off more than they could chew.
Even though he doesn't have the backing yet, Doug is convinced that he can raise the money. So dozens of dancers from all over the world flock to American National Ballet with the promise of year-long contracts, state-of-the-art studio facilities, even a housing stipend for apartments in the heart of Charleston.
The idea was remarkable. The execution was a little less.
It became somewhat apparent fairly quickly that Doug was overpromising and not going to be able to deliver on all of this.
In the fall of 2017, the dancers began arriving, only to find that the promised housing stipend isn't available, and the original rehearsal space promised doesn't exist.
And then, I think in mid-October, word started to get out that the dancers weren't quite getting paid in a traditional way. They were being paid in cash.
Doug was then pulling money from every source that he could of his own, money that he didn't have, to try to just fund this ballet.
It just got worse and worse each day. I didn't know where the company was going.
Adding to the chaos, Ashley is nowhere to be found. Not at rehearsals, not working with the dancers. She seems to have just vanished. And meantime, Doug is so financially strapped that American National Ballet ends up laying off nearly half of the recently hired dancers.
It's all fine and well to conceive of an amazing, ambitious dance company. It's great, but if you can't deliver it, somebody's going to get hurt. And the dancers, certainly in this case, are the ones who got hurt the most.
The very next day, after half the company's dancers are let go, Ashley suddenly reappears. Not in person, but in a post on social media, writing in part, I publicly disavow my support for American National Ballet, and adding, I'm no longer associated with this organization in any way.
I was horrified. I didn't know all of the things that were falling apart behind the scenes. I didn't see it coming. I no longer wanted to be part of it.
Ashley left the scene, and then Doug abandoned the scene. Like one day, he just wasn't there anymore. The organization evaporated.
People were mad. People were very angry. Because losing your job in ballet is not like, okay, go on Indeed and see what's, who's hiring. You're kind of locked out for the year until the next audition season.
American National Ballet has hurt everyone. You can't make promises and not live up to them because there are people's livelihoods that are involved. There are people's dreams that are involved.
Some fault Doug for mismanaging the ballet, and others blame Ashley for disappearing.
Ashley's absence from the ballet company was a very significant basis for the failure. She was the face of this company. When she left, the dancers, they didn't have anything.
But Ashley says there's a reason she left Charleston and the ballet behind. She claims she had to, that her very life depended on it.
He pulled the gun out and started waving it around. I was living a nightmare. It was terrifying. It was like two different people, and I never knew which Doug I was gonna get.
In less than a year, Doug and Ashley Benefield's American National Ballet goes bust. What very few people knew, though, was that behind the scenes, the same was happening to the couple's marriage.
Doug always explained to me that the biggest factor of growing tensions at home was the conflict between Ashley and Eva.
I felt like Ashley would try and act like my mom and tell me what to do. And I was like, you were less than 10 years older than me.
Ashley says while American National Ballet is getting up and running, Doug and her arguments over Eva and the ballet become more frequent, aggressive, even scary.
He would yell and scream and cuss. It was like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Things would be happy and okay one moment, and then the next minute he was out of control.
I never really saw a shift in their relationship, but that's also because I was trying to stay out of it as much as possible. I said, okay, if my dad's happy, I'm happy.
On June 15, 2017, Eva is out of the house when a heated argument between Doug and Ashley quickly escalates.
He pulled the gun out and started waving it around. He threw the gun at me. He said that if I left, that he was going to kill himself. I begged him not to. And then he pulled the trigger. And the bullet went into the ceiling.
At a legal hearing the couple will later attend, you can hear Doug's own voice as he describes this incident. While he doesn't deny the argument or firing his 9mm, he disputes Ashley's characterization of the fight.
You did discharge the gun into the ceiling, correct?
Yeah, I did. It was a horrible decision.
She says he then threw the gun at me. That didn't happen, did it?
No, I did not throw the gun at her. I just kind of spun in the chair and threw it against the wall.
She says Doug then grabbed the gun again and held it to his own head, threatening to kill myself. Did you do that?
No, I did not.
Ashley says at another point during that same argument, Doug physically abuses the family dog.
He hit Sully.
Your dog.
Sully got between us and he punched him.
At that same 2018 hearing, Doug tells a different version of this story to Ashley's attorney.
You also punched the dog the day that you discharged the firearm.
He jumped up in my lap. He's a big dog. I admit I hit him. I didn't hit him like you would, hit a punching bag or anything, but I hit him. But yes, I was probably too physical with him.
Were you beginning to rethink the marriage?
After he shot the gun in the house, that's when I really realized that I had a problem. I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know what was coming next.
What comes next for the couple is a bit surprising. A celebration of marriage 9 months after their initial hasty I-do's.
They had a wedding ceremony right after that. Everyone's smiling. She's smiling.
People had already booked their tickets and everyone was coming. And I didn't want them to see that part of my life. I felt like a failure. I didn't know what else to do.
Even with their turbulent marriage, Doug and Ashley decide they want to have a child together. In August, you find out you're pregnant. What do you think initially?
I was scared. It was supposed to be like a happy thing, but my heart dropped. Like, what am I supposed to do?
Here again, Doug's story differs from Ashley's.
It wasn't an accident, of course, that she got pregnant. It was planned. Doug had had a vasectomy years ago. Ashley paid with her own credit card for Doug to have a vasectomy reversal, and they then started to try to get pregnant.
One thing both sides do agree on, Ashley had a difficult pregnancy.
It was rough.
Morning sickness?
Yeah, and it wasn't even morning sickness. It was like around the clock sickness. I couldn't eat. He couldn't take care of me. And he drove me down to Florida and dropped me off at my mom's house.
Doug's life is a whirlwind. He's got his hands full in Charleston with the ballet company and raising his teen daughter, Eva. And he's spending his free time driving to Florida to be with Ashley. The two are in constant communication.
Doug was driving back and forth to take care of his family, spread across these two states. And he had to also be back in Charleston because on September 18th, this was going to be the big launch of the American National Ballet. Ashley was not going to be able to be present for the launch, supposedly because she was so sick.
But at that very moment, what Doug doesn't know is that Ashley and her mom are driving from Florida to Charleston, not to attend the ballet launch, but for an entirely different reason. On September 18th, you decided to move your belongings out of Doug's home.
Yeah.
She wrote a note alleging some things were wrong in the house and that there had been some abuse or at least violence on his part and that she was therefore leaving him.
Ashley writes, "Do not harass or try to follow me or I will call the police," and then goes on to say, "I will talk with you only via text, and do not call me or my mom. We will not pick up."
He was completely stunned. He had no idea Ashley was leaving him.
Just after learning that his wife is leaving him, Doug is again blindsided by a restraining order, barring him from contacting Ashley. The expectant dad then hires family attorney Stephen Murphy to act as an intermediary.
Doug wanted to be present for the birth if Ashley felt comfortable. I sent the letter to Ashley asking, can Doug be part of the birth?
But Murphy says shortly after sending that letter, Ashley gives birth to a baby girl named Emerson, 3 weeks before her due date. Did you tell Doug?
No, there was a restraining order, so I couldn't legally have contact with him.
But he's the father of the child.
Yeah. Yep.
Did you intend for him to find out?
I mean, I knew he would. Eventually.
Doug didn't know that Ashley had given birth. He learned through an injunction that she filed that the child had been born. And that was several weeks after the child had been born.
Doug's not on the birth certificate. She didn't even give Doug the respect of naming his daughter Benefield. She gave the baby's last name as her grandfather's name. He was devastated. He was devastated that he missed the birth of his child and that he was not able to see her.
But Ashley says she was only doing what any mother would do. She believed that Doug was a danger, not only to her, but to her newborn daughter, too.
At first, I attributed it to morning sickness, but I started to wonder if there was more to it.
Every morning, he would make sure she drank the tea. Why? Why was that so important that she drink the tea?
It's April 2018. Ashley Benefield is a new mom, changing diapers, nursing her infant daughter. And at the same time, she's filing court papers seeking a protection order against her husband and the father of her baby, Doug Benefield.
So it would just basically put up a wall between Ashley and Doug.
It's not just that incident with the gun and the dog. Medical records suggest that she was in good health. Still, she says she had a growing suspicion that the terrible morning sickness she had wasn't just a routine part of her pregnancy. She wondered whether she was being poisoned. by Doug.
It seemed like crazy and far-fetched. But I realized that the tea that he had been giving me, if I didn't drink it, he would get really mad at me. And I started to wonder if he was doing something to the tea.
She started telling me every morning he would make sure she drank the tea. Why? Why was that so important that she drink the tea?
I did some toxicology testing through hair testing.
And what did it reveal?
That I had been poisoned.
The results from the lab Ashley privately hires for her hair test show extremely high levels of heavy metals like aluminum, barium, tin. The tests on baby Emerson also detect toxic metals. So you're thinking that your husband, the man who loved you and seemed to adore you, would poison you?
Yeah.
Why?
I didn't know why.
Ashley says she became so concerned for her health that she resorted to some pretty serious measures, including more than 20 sessions inside a hyperbaric chamber like this one, along with her infant daughter. Ashley says her hope was that this high-pressure environment would help detoxify their blood. She insists that her fear that Doug had tried to poison them was real. Others call it fiction.
Doug never poisoned Ashley. I read the allegations and I thought, oh my God, this is crazy.
Doug's family attorney points to those medical records during and after Ashley's pregnancy, showing her to be in good health.
The day after the baby was born, she was breastfeeding the baby. So which is it? Are you poisoned to the point that you are full of heavy metals, or are you okay and therefore you're going to breastfeed your baby? There's always been holes in the story.
A judge agrees, siding with Doug and his toxicology expert who challenged Ashley's test results. Her request to keep Doug away from her and their child is denied.
There is not a single scintilla of credible evidence that Miss Benefield has ever been poisoned.
The judge didn't believe you.
Yeah. I started to just feel like maybe I was crazy. Maybe it was all in my head.
So now Doug Benefield has moved into an apartment in Florida as the couple attempts to co-parent Emerson.
But things started to deteriorate. He was becoming very possessive and controlling again.
Doug has a tracking device put on Ashley's car, even hires a private investigator. His attorney says it wasn't unreasonable given Ashley's past allegations.
He never tried to hide the fact that he had put the tracker on the car. I think he wanted just to kind of figure out what's going on. Am I being lied to?
And then, new concerns from Ashley.
She started coming home hurt. One day came back with her face very badly injured.
And what were you told?
He said that she was playing with bubbles and that she slipped and fell.
It was consistent with what happened. She fell on her face with a pacifier. Ashley, however, made another abuse allegation.
The sheriff's office and Child Protective Services investigate the claims and conclude that there are no indicators of injury or abuse.
None of these cases led to charges. The Child Protection team closed them without any findings, and then the sheriff's office closed them as unfounded.
Then, amidst all this tension, the Benefields make a decision that will confound everybody who knows them.
He had gotten a job in Maryland, and so we started talking about all moving.
Moving as a family to Maryland?
Not as a family, but moving, like together at the same time.
I was just stunned. And once again, Doug, what are you doing? She tried to ruin your life.
All along, Doug would tell everyone who knew him, I believe I can make this work.
How do you rationalize patching things up with a man who you think has been abusing your daughter?
He was her father. I wanted things to be as good as they could be.
But you know now that this sounds pretty dysfunctional.
Yeah. There didn't seem to be a good option.
So you're packing up. You're gonna make this move. Doug comes over. Did you two begin arguing?
He was constantly going back to this idea that we had to live together, telling me that it wasn't how God intended it. He just flipped out, and it just kept escalating.
Escalating, she says, to the point of no return.
When you take a good man and a woman who's manipulative at her professional level, he's not ever going to play chess with her and win.
That bedroom was empty, other than 2 handguns.
We found that suspicious.
I was extremely concerned about Ashley's safety. Ashley was about to knock down that house of cards.
I don't think he could have ever guessed what was going to happen to him.
And what happened?
I had my gun. I told him to stop. Sorry.
What led you to go for the gun?
I've never been so scared in my life.
The information that I had was that it was a domestic-related shooting. The husband was dead. The wife did the shooting, and she claimed self-defense.
Benefield's life is taking center stage at what's been dubbed the Black Swan murder trial.
Good morning, Miss Benefield.
There was always this little thought in the back of my head that said Ashley's going to do something to him.
She said, my dad's dead, isn't he? And then she said she killed him. She killed him, didn't she?
Why would you have a loaded gun in the house and you've got a child?
There was a ticking clock. She was very, very afraid that Doug was going to take this child away from her.
This is all part of Ashley's crazy campaign to just annihilate Doug in every single way.
And starts moving his arms around. Well, show me. What was he doing?
We stand with Ashley! We stand with Ashley!
Even her own little daughter marching for her mom.
We stand with Ashley!
He told you he had killed his wife?
And he said that he could make me disappear too.
In the ballet world, it's known as the pas de deux, a duet, a step of two. For Ashley and Doug Benefield, a former ballerina and a businessman, their dance begins with a 13-day whirlwind courtship, plans to build a ballet company, and later, a baby. But the love affair turns dark and disturbing. Court battles, disputed allegations of poisoning, abuse. And in the finale, Doug and Ashley, seemingly about to reconcile and start anew, reach a sudden and tragic end. What happened in the moments before the gunshots rang out in this Florida community in September of 2020 will be scrutinized for years by investigators, by lawyers, and the media. Ashley Benefield has kept quiet about what she says happened that night until she sat down with me. How are you doing?
It depends on the moment. Just a lot of emotion, kind of like a roller coaster.
That roller coaster, Ashley says, took a sharp turn in the fall of 2020, when after 4 years of ups and downs, she and her husband Doug were preparing to move to Maryland. The plan, according to Ashley, was to continue living separately, just as they had in Florida.
He was constantly going back to this idea that we had to live together.
In these text messages from September 27th, the Benefields exchanged jokes, even emojis. Doug arrives at 5:30 with a U-Haul at the gated community where Ashley lives with her mom. Ashley's mom and daughter Emerson are out of the house at a nearby park. Ashley claims it isn't long before things go from friendly to fiery. Sounds like you guys are just agreeing to pack, and did you two begin arguing verbally? Was there yelling?
There was a back and forth.
She goes on to say that Doug becomes physically aggressive too, at one point bumping into her with a moving box and scraping her side. She then says she tries to diffuse the tension and asks him to leave.
He ended up trapping me. And I tried to leave. He hit me.
Where did he hit you? Did he threaten you?
He said I couldn't leave. I almost made it to the front door and he stopped me. I ran to my bedroom and he followed me there. Told him to stop. Sorry.
What led you to go for the gun?
He had never hit me before. I thought he would stop if he saw it.
What did you think was about to happen?
I thought he was actually going to kill me this time.
Did he have a gun?
Not that I could see. He told me I was done. And even though I was the one holding the gun, he lunged at me. I'm sorry.
You fired 4 times. You missed him twice. And when you hit him, what did you think?
I ran.
Ashley says she races out of her house over to a neighbor's home. 2 residents who were out walking their dog who heard the shots described seeing a woman frantically running from the home.
Maine County 911. What is the emergency?
Okay, Lori's right next door to me. She just came over. Her strange husband attacked her, and she says she shot him.
Okay, what's his name?
His name is Doug Benefield.
They said that Doug attacked me and I shot him. It was all a blur.
Did you think you had killed him?
I didn't know if he was behind me or chasing me or what. I didn't know.
I don't know. She came in. She was quite hysterical. I didn't know who was banging on my door. She said that he attacked her, and she shot him.
And at the end of that call, even though the neighbor had never seen Doug or Ashley fight, he tells the dispatcher something alarming.
Just between you and me, the son of a bitch has been harassing him and threatening him for a long time.
Okay.
I probably shouldn't say that.
When law enforcement first arrived at the house following the 911 call, and they make it in the house, they find Doug.
He had a gunshot wound to his calf through and through. He had a gunshot wound to his right side chest area that landed in his back across on the left-hand side. Paramedics arrived. They continued CPR and took him to the hospital, but he was pronounced deceased at the hospital.
This is the man that you had loved, the father of your child. What did you make of it when you heard that he was dead?
I was horrified. It's like the worst nightmare.
A nightmare Ashley won't wake up from anytime soon.
That bedroom was essentially empty, other than 2 handguns.
One of them was in a backpack, hanging in the closet. One of them was just in a bin on top of a hamper. And we found that suspicious.
I think that definitely gave the detectives pause.
There was always this little thought in the back of my head that said Ashley's going to do something to him. Ashley's going to sabotage him somehow. There's a look in her eyes where she just looks like she finally got her way.
I remember thinking to myself, there's something wrong here.
Every morning, Doug reached out to Eva no matter where he was in the world.
He would either text me a good morning or he would send me a Bible verse. So I expected that.
And that morning, he didn't send it.
Or I texted him like 10 times. And then I said, Dad, this is scaring me.
Monday morning, I was in the office, and I saw an email that Ashley's attorney sent said, we need to cancel Wednesday's hearing. Doug is dead. I had to call Doug's family. It was just heart-wrenching. The poor girl, she knew. She just said, my dad's dead, isn't he? And then she said she killed him. She killed him, didn't she?
And I set my phone down and I said, I don't have parents anymore. I was just shaking violently for like 6 hours.
Doug Benefield's family and friends are grappling with unthinkably tragic news. And meantime, investigators are trying to make sense of what happened the night before.
The information that I had was that it was a domestic-related shooting. The husband was dead. The wife did the shooting, and she claimed self-defense.
Ashley is taken to the sheriff's office, where attorneys from her family court case are waiting. You didn't give a statement. Why not?
My attorney is yelling to me in the parking lot. You know, don't say anything, don't say anything. I guess I was just following advice.
Ashley does consent to photos that she says document the swelling on her face where she says Doug hit her.
When I saw her that night after she left the police station, the left side of her face was swollen. She had obviously been struck. The next morning when she was changing a shirt, I saw a cut on her stomach.
But law enforcement contends that Ashley's injuries don't suggest a life or death struggle.
There was no swelling, there was no bruising, there was no difference in the way she looked. The entirety of the injuries that they found that were relevant was a scratch on her side, and that was it. They got pictures of every angle, of every place that the attorneys wanted them to take, and there were no injuries except for that scratch.
And investigators are also skeptical of Ashley's claims of being attacked because Doug was unarmed. She had access to 2 weapons. You said that you were a responsible gun owner, but why would you have a loaded gun in the house and you've got a child?
Well, the purpose of having a gun is for, like, a self-defense. The idea is that if something were to happen crazy in the middle of the night, that it would be accessible.
But you've got a loaded gun that's basically sort of out in a bin. There are those who say that sounds really suspicious.
I mean, I feel like anything can be turned to try to make it look a certain way.
We found that suspicious, that someone would have 2 guns readily accessible in an empty room when everything else is in a U-Haul truck.
According to the medical examiner's report, the fatal gunshot entered the right side of Doug Benefield's chest. To investigators, that doesn't fit with somebody who's lunging toward her.
If someone were coming at you or attacking you, the entrance wound to the fatal shot would not be in the side.
And results from the forensic lab raise even more questions about Ashley's claim of self-defense.
There was no stippling on Doug's shirt, so that told us that the barrel of the gun was at least 3 to 7 feet away, and that's the barrel of the gun, not even her body. So they were not in a combat life or death situation where they were locked together.
Just over a month after Doug Benefield is shot and killed, Ashley is charged with second-degree murder. She pleads not guilty.
The Manatee County woman charged with shooting and killing her husband.
Suspect for second-degree murder and the...
You're arrested. Charged with Doug's murder. What did you think?
I was shocked. I was blinded by it.
In the minds of investigators, Doug Benefield's demise wasn't about self-defense. To them, it was Ashley's plan all along.
The whole lie, the whole deception is coming to an end.
Doug was going to find out your wife is lying to you.
There was a ticking clock. She was very, very afraid that Doug was going to take this child away from her. Very afraid.
But others insist the real victim here is Ashley.
Doug Benefield was anything but what he portrayed himself to be.
This is someone who was a predator, and this is someone who was not going to be stopped.
You told me that he killed Renee.
He told you he had killed his wife?
And he said that he could make me disappear too.
I always try to go and sit and watch the sunset when I can. There's so many good memories there. We chose to spread my dad's ashes on station 22 and a half. And that is the same station that my parents met.
We have a celebration, raise a toast of a life well lived and a terrible ending to a life.
A life Doug's family insists was cut short by a woman they say was driven to destroy him.
No one at the memorial service in any way believed the story of Doug attacking Ashley, her shooting him out of fear. Doug still loved Ashley in spite of what she did to him, in spite of all the accusations, all the allegations.
I said, why do you keep going back? And he said, I just want to show her that, I'm a good man and men can be good. And then he wanted Emerson to have a happy family.
He was willing to do whatever he had to do to be a part of Emerson's life.
And while it appears to some that the couple were trying for yet another fresh start, their family court case in Florida was still open. Both Ashley and Doug had been evaluated by a psychologist, and that report was completed just before the planned move to Maryland. Prosecutors insist the report about Ashley is crucial, that once released, Doug was going to learn that she had no intention of reconciling.
Ashley was afraid that Doug was going to take custody away from her. This is a judge that did not believe her theatrics, and if anyone was going to do it, it was going to be this judge.
And prosecutors believe the move to Maryland offers Ashley another chance and another court to keep Doug away from her and their child.
I believed that she was going to start everything again in Maryland and hope for a different result.
Were you thinking at all you've got another state you could try to fight him for custody?
My hope is that if something was going wrong, that maybe in a fresh place, they would take it more seriously.
Ashley's mindset leading up to the shooting, prosecutors say, is critical. Was this a woman who truly feared for her life?
Text messages between Doug and Ashley leading up to that day, in the days ahead, and then the day of the homicide were very normal.
To say that someone couldn't have been defending themselves later in a day because of nice text messages that morning is absurd. Doug was always like a flip of a switch.
He could turn on a dime. He could be very happy. He could be charming. But then, for no reason at all, he could get very upset. We kept on asking for help. It's been years of absolute hell. And we went from one abuser to a system that is abusing a victim.
Were you an abused woman?
Yeah. I didn't think so at first. I remember trying to argue, no, it's not like that. I don't have broken bones and black eyes.
Most incidents of domestic violence are subtle, where the offender uses isolation, financial control, threatening, verbal abuse, things that the general public doesn't necessarily see. But these are also things that the victim doesn't always know is abuse.
There was no evidence to indicate that she was truly a victim of abuse in the months leading up to the homicide when they were not even living together.
In the months before the shooting, Ashley reaches out to a domestic violence agency and eventually connects with a therapist, Dr. Barbara Russell, who becomes a trusted friend and advocate.
This relationship was very controlling. He was incessantly sending her text messages saying that all of the men that are probably flirting with her need to be exterminated like rats. And then he would shift gears and talk to her very lovingly and sweetly. Like most domestic violence situations, it escalated. He would push her, he would lock her in bathrooms.
During one of those alleged incidents early in their relationship, Ashley claims Doug admitted something about his late wife that terrified her.
He had always told me that they had this fairy tale marriage, that they never fought. And then I found messages.
Text messages, she says, reveal a side of Doug that Ashley claims she saw in her own marriage.
She said one time he kicked her really hard. He had secretly videotaped them starting on their honeymoon. One time we were having an argument, and he told me that he killed Renee.
He told you he had killed his wife?
And he said that he could make me disappear too.
An investigation was done. There was no finding of foul play in any way. There was a full autopsy.
The coroner in Renee's death investigation ruled that she died of natural causes due to a heart condition.
Ashley tried to convince me that my dad killed my mom. I said, Dad, this is what she's doing. She was just kind of like, we're going to therapy where, things will be okay. Obviously, I didn't kill your mom.
This was all part of Ashley's crazy campaign. Ashley wanted to keep Doug away from that kid at the expense of everything and everyone else. She would not stop.
Her goal was never to get rid of Doug. Her goal was to keep her daughter safe That's very different than wanting to kill somebody.
Two starkly different portraits of Ashley Benefield. Is she a murderer?
Benefield taking center stage at what has been dubbed the Black Swan murder trial.
Or a victim who stood her ground?
He told her she was finished.
He's coming at you and you have nowhere to go. What do? You shoot to protect yourself.
A legal strategy that could keep Ashley free.
This is the one chance at this point that we have to end it all now.
We stand with Ashley, mother, daughter, sister, friend.
All right, here, how about I push you this way? Ready?
So what's summer been like for you?
Emerson does a lot of swimming, right?
Yeah, I can swim alone pretty much.
So you're getting to be a strong swimmer.
Great job.
Ashley Benefield has spent several years under house arrest, living with her mom and daughter Emerson, who's now 5, while awaiting trial for second-degree murder.
Here we are, climbing trees, catching geckos.
This has been hanging, in the balance really for years now. And in the same time, you're trying to mother.
It definitely wouldn't be what I would pick, but I'm thankful for all the good things that we have. She's an amazing little girl. I love being her mommy.
Meanwhile, the other daughter, caught in the middle, 22-year-old Eva Benefield, found her own way to process her pain.
When I was 15, my mom died of an underlying heart condition. I had been on TikTok for like a few months, and I thought, oh, that'd be funny. I made a joke about my dad being murdered. I made a TikTok, and I put my phone down, and I went to bed, and I woke up, and it was at 700,000 likes. And then it just kept going and going and going. It got like 3 million likes and like 10 million views. And within 2 weeks, I had 100,000 followers.
Eva has gone from grieving and stuck in trauma to getting help to finding an outlet in her art.
Eva, Doug's daughter, does not support you. Do you want to say anything to her?
My heart's broken for her. She has been through so much. I wouldn't even know where to start.
In February 2023, Ashley's legal team files a motion to dismiss under Florida's Stand Your Ground law. The law allows the use of deadly force if a person believes that that force is necessary to prevent imminent death or to prevent a violent crime without any expectation to retreat.
Doug stopped her from fleeing her home. Well, that would be false imprisonment, and that would qualify as a violent felony, which would give her the right to use deadly force.
Ashley's defense filed a 105-page motion presenting her version of the night she shot Doug. For his family, it was the first time hearing her side.
The story they've made up is as implausible as everything else she ever made up about Doug and their relationship. It's implausible that any of that occurred the way she and her lawyer have told it.
The court found enough merit in Ashley's motion to grant her a hearing. Now the burden of proof shifts to the state to prove that Ashley did not act in self-defense.
The prosecution has to basically put on a trial, but it's just a hearing in front of a judge.
Well, with this hearing, we have the opportunity to put a stop to the proceedings. Then I get my life back.
Doug's family travels to Florida to attend the hearing.
It feels a little weird just because the last time I was here was when my dad was alive.
All right, good morning, everyone. We are on the record in the state of Florida versus Ashley Benefield.
The state calls 8 witnesses, including Doug's family members and law enforcement, who testify that Ashley had no significant injuries to justify self-defense.
Did you have a crime scene technician take photographs of her?
We did.
And why did you want pictures?
I didn't notice any kind of injuries, things that you would typically see during a physical altercation.
For their part, the defense relied solely on the details laid out in the 105-page motion filed before the hearing, calling no witnesses.
there was no independent evidence that refuted her version of events. I believe this motion compels the court to grant it. Thank you for the court's patience.
Judge didn't rule from the bench. They typically do not. After the hearing ended, we just had to wait for a written order.
It would take 2 months, but ultimately the judge would deny Ashley Benefield's stand your ground motion, saying the state had shown the shooting was not in self-defense. Now, out of options, Benefield will have to face a jury of her peers in this courthouse.
And happening right now, potential jurors being questioned in what people are calling the Black Swan trial.
The Black Swan trial.
Black Swan murder trial?
The Black Swan has a catchy ring, and it sensationalizes my life. And it's sad to me that people who don't even know me have this idea of a monster.
But not everybody sees her that way.
We stand with Ashley!
We stand with Ashley!
Dozens of protesters here at the Manatee County Courthouse marching in defense of Ashley Benefield.
And the littlest supporter marching out there also happens to be one of Ashley's biggest defenders.
She kept on asking, Mommy, can I go? Can I go? I want to be part of this. I want to stand up for my mommy. I don't want to be without my mommy. And sorry.
With Ashley Benefield now facing the possibility of life in prison, the big question is, will the jury believe her?
The entire dynamic of the trial shifting today as Ashley Benefield made her way to the stand.
The stakes for Ashley were extremely high.
I was hoping that they would call Ashley.
There's nowhere to go. I was trapped.
I really just wanted them to see Ashley for Ashley.
I thought he was going to kill me.
Testimony in the so-called Black Swan murder trial happening in Manatee County.
Supporters rallying behind Ashley Benefield. Benefield is the Manatee County woman charged with shooting and killing her husband, Doug Benefield.
After nearly 4 years, Ashley Benefield finally gets her day in court, where she's hoping to prove that she shot her husband, Doug, in self-defense.
This was a custody battle that this mother was going to win at all costs. And the cost was the life of Doug Benefield. And that is murder.
All right, state, call your first witness.
The prosecution gets to work building its case.
State calls Stephanie Murphy,
calling Doug Benefield's family attorney to the stand.
At the time the child was born, did you or Doug know that the child was born?
No, gosh, we didn't know for a good 5 or 6 weeks after she was born.
All right, who's your next witness?
Detective Chris Gillum.
All right.
The state also calls the detective who spoke with Ashley back in 2018 when he investigated her claims that Doug had abused their daughter.
She asked for me to arrest Doug when he came inside the courtroom in front of the presiding judge.
And what was your reaction to that?
That absolutely would not occur.
And how did she take that?
She was upset.
I think it was very important testimony. It was a snapshot into the real Ashley Benefield.
Her tone turned very aggressive, and she says, "You will arrest him in front of the judge, and I will make sure you do." And she says, "I'll do whatever I have to do to keep my baby UA whole."
Ashley's side insists she was only trying to protect her child from a man she was terrified of.
Defense would call Dr. Jason Quintel.
They call a mental health counselor who saw both Doug and Ashley.
Did you conclude whether there was an intimidation issue present?
Ashley stated that she was scared of Doug.
Did you reach any conclusions with respect to Douglas Benefield?
Doug occurred as someone who was domineering, and the terminology that I would use at times would be super controlling. He would fit the stereotype of an alpha male, in my opinion.
The defense also turns to a domestic violence expert to explain why, even though Ashley claimed she was living in fear, it may not have always looked that way from the outside.
How common is it, Mr. Ferris, for a victim of domestic violence to smile and act happy in the company of the abuser?
Very much so, because they're afraid. They found this least resistance. They're trying to not poke the bear, as we'll say.
Doug didn't verbally abuse her, never physically touched her. He would be angry over how she tried to ruin his life, but the anger never came out in inappropriate ways.
Then, defense calls the one person they believe can convince the jury of Ashley's innocence.
The defense calls Ashley Benefield. How are you feeling this morning, Ashley?
Nervous.
The questioning quickly turning to the night of the shooting.
I ran to try to leave the house. He hit me on the side of the head. He'd never actually hit me before.
What did you do?
I ran. Doug was standing in the doorway. His face was red. Like the veins were bulging in his neck. The way he was looking at me didn't even look like Doug. His eyes were black. I just held the gun like in front of me and I said, stop. And he like turned and he got into this like, it was like a fighting stance. I thought he was gonna kill me.
Somehow, Ashley Benefield found the strength to testify on her own behalf. And I thought she did it extremely well. Judge, I wonder, can we have a minute?
Ashley used a lot of theatrics, a lot of, in my opinion, acting. Looking her in the face, it did not seem genuine to me.
Ma'am, there's please right next to you.
Okay, thank you.
Even though she cried hysterically numerous times, there was not one tear.
In her cross-examination, prosecutor Suzanne O'Donnell presses Ashley about that moment she says Doug hit her in the head.
You say he slapped you?
I wouldn't know how to classify it. He struck me, he hit me.
Was his hand open or closed?
I don't remember.
Okay. In direct examination, she knew the color of his eyes and the way he was acting, and when I asked her, did he hit you with an open hand or a closed hand, she didn't know. Wouldn't you know if someone hit you with a fist versus an open hand? Judge, I can have her step down so she can demonstrate. I absolutely wanted to get her down off of the stand because she would have been that much closer to the jury. Okay, so he's standing there. He turns to like this and starts moving his arms around. Like that. Well, show me. What was he doing?
You know, like I already got like this, and he was like making like fighting motions. I don't know. I'm not a fighter. I don't know.
Okay. This was the time to show the jury exactly what the person was doing. Why were you so scared? And she just couldn't do it. And I believe that that was because it didn't really happen.
And O'Donnell zeroes in on the physical evidence, arguing that it contradicts Ashley's claims of self-defense.
So I want to talk a little bit about this trajectory. The fatal bullet went in the side of the chest and almost came out the other side of the back. Her story was he starts to lunge at her. If she then lifted the gun and shot, it would go in his chest and right out his back. It would not go side to side.
Everybody unanimously agreed that the wound path of that projectile was from front to back, left to right. Well, I don't care how much you would like to move front to back to the side, it is still front to back. Ashley's action on that day was absolutely justified. She had the right to stand her ground and use force, including deadly force. For the last several years, I've walked hand in hand with Ashley. I'm now going to surrender her fate to you.
So all of you may now retire to consider your verdict.
Any minute now, Ashley Benefield could learn her fate.
I've played out, I guess, both scenarios in my mind.
6 hours into the deliberations, tensions began building in the jury room.
Then, at approximately 10 o'clock, the jurors sent out a note.
When they came back, I feel a sinking feeling. We were heavy-hearted at that moment.
Are you envisioning what it might be like to hear guilty?
Yeah, I've played out, I guess, both scenarios in my mind. I mean, part of this just doesn't seem real. I keep thinking maybe one day I'll wake up from the nightmare and realize that none of this happened.
Jurors still deliberating after closing arguments.
It's 10 p.m. The jury in Ashley Benefield's case has been deliberating for 6 hours. Then, a message from the foreperson.
I've received a note from you. It says, unable to come to unanimous verdict.
even worse than a not guilty would be a hung jury, because then the family has to go through this again. We just need some finality.
But the judge encourages the jurors to keep deliberating and try to come to a consensus.
We'll be in recess until we get another question or a verdict.
And less than an hour later...
Breaking news, we have a verdict. When I saw that there was a verdict a half an hour later, my heart was in my throat.
The jury finds the defendant is guilty of manslaughter, a lesser included offense.
The jury does not find Ashley guilty of second-degree murder. Instead, they convict her of the lesser charge of manslaughter.
We were hopeful for a second-degree murder conviction, but we were very, very satisfied with a manslaughter conviction.
Ashley learns she'll be sentenced at a later date.
The sound was as good as the sight. We're very thankful that she was taken off to jail.
If she hadn't had her gun that night, I know without a shadow of a doubt my daughter would be dead. I am sure of it. Why do they not believe women? Why should women live in fear?
I feel that Ashley was abusing a system that is designed to help people that are victims. Sets everyone back and it makes it so much harder for those people that really are victims.
I'll tell you, the hardest part of that verdict was not in the courtroom. It was when we came back to our office without Ashley. Emerson was there waiting for her mom, but she wouldn't leave right around that elevator. She just stayed there.
This case has always been sad to me because there are children involved that had nothing to do with this. Emerson's without her father and probably going to be without her mother now for a long time. Doug's family got justice. Eva's still without her father.
Today kind of just feels like the first day of the rest of my life. I hope one day me and Emerson will be able to have a relationship where she can come to me with any questions, and I hope that one day I'll be able to explain how great of a father my dad would have been to her and how great he was for the short amount of time that they got to spend together.
Ashley Benefield is scheduled to be sentenced next month. David, she faces up to 30 years in prison.
And as for Doug and Ashley's 6-year-old daughter, Emerson, she's currently living with Ashley's mother now. That's our program for tonight. Thanks for watching. I'm David Muir.
And I'm Deborah Roberts. From all of us here at 2020 and ABC News, good night.
Dog walkers came across the bin bags.
They find this is a disposal of some body parts.
The brutality of it, it was unbelievable.
It's what the psychos do.
It was a massive shock to everybody. Things don't happen like that in a community like this. People just couldn't believe it. Obviously, it makes you scared.
You think there's a serial killer on the loose? Is this gang related?
And I got a phone call, and then my world fell apart. They knew, but I didn't know there was anything wrong.
Just south of Manchester, at the start of the River Mersey, sits Stockport.
Well, there's a lot of history with Stockport. There's a church behind here that goes 16th century.
Stockport's quite a quiet town. I grew up there, I was born there, raised there, went to school there, and there was a sense of community and people rallying round. If anything happens, there's a lot of support there, and if you're from Stockport, people sort of stick together from there.
People are very friendly, very nice, very approachable.
On the outskirts of Stockport, nestled amongst the serene surroundings of a leafy country park, is Brinnington.
I think Brinnington's an absolutely fantastic place to live. Everybody is a big family. Everybody looks out for each other, and it is a tight-knit community.
For those wanting an escape from the hustle and bustle of nearby Stockport, locals can soak up the nature in Reddish Vale Country Park.
The Vale, it's a lovely place. We used to go out, we used to climb on the trees. It's just a kid's wildest dream, then you can do what you want when you're down the Vale.
You get quite a lot of people fishing down there. a lot of people down there with the dogs and running and things like that. It's lovely, it's really nice.
The tranquility of this country park was shattered one summer's morning.
It was all in lockdown, and so my granddaughter, she used to walk the dog for us every couple of days. And one day she came back. She said, just going down, she said there was a big bag of meat there, Gran. Like bin bag, and it was all ripped open. I said, oh, so you didn't let our dog touch it, did you? She said, no. Wouldn't let her touch it. She went trying to sniff at it, but I just pulled her back. She did, it didn't look very good, it was all green. She said, I think it was something from a butcher's. So, didn't think anything more about it.
But moments later, another dog walker grows suspicious.
Dog walkers came across the bin bags. They called into the police and reported, that these bags had been found.
Dog walker walking in here sees a black bag and the dog's in the black bag. As soon as they open it, they can smell the bad smell. It will be a case of, I think, what do I do now? And I expect the thing is to ring the police.
Alerted to the scene by a putrid smell coming from the bags, police inspect them, only to make a horrific discovery.
They find this is a disposal of some body parts.
Having identified some human remains in the bags, police secure the scene, and a murder investigation is immediately launched.
So the police officer turns up to the scene, finds parts of a body. Straight away, they'll be thinking, preservation, let's get some specialist teams down here. They've got to then put a cordon in the area so that nobody can come in and take pictures and disturb the scene. Most police officers will have seen dead bodies, but it's an entirely different kettle of fish, isn't it, when you've seen a body cut up.
News of the shocking discovery quickly spreads, and local reporters rush to the scene.
There was a massive sense of urgency with this. We cover a lot of murders in Manchester, but nothing like this. We're just trying to establish what had happened. All that we knew was that a body's been found, dismembered in bin bags in a country park. That was just, it was unbelievable at the time.
As the story spreads, the local community struggles to come to terms with what's been found on their doorstep.
It was a massive shock to everybody. Things don't happen like that in a community like this. How could somebody do that? It's absolutely horrific.
It rocked the community, the brutality of it. It shocked a lot of people.
Just people just couldn't believe it. Obviously it makes you scared, especially if it's just around the corner from where you live.
The shock of it just got about. It was just like it was more like when a rumour gets about. How do you drop a bag on the bail with a human body in it? Do you know what I mean? It's what the psychos do.
News of the crime spreads fast, but the most important question on everyone's lips is, who is the victim?
The police will not know who that victim is at that moment. The family of that individual will not know that their loved one has died. So the police would have been looking at the missing persons register. It's important to try and get to the family of that individual as quickly as possible.
But there's a problem. The bags contain only certain body parts, making an initial identification impossible. And it spreads fear amongst families in the local community.
For the residents, it was a very, very difficult situation. You might have people whose parents, daughters, sons didn't come home for one reason or the other. So they were even worried that it could have been their loved one.
The police have no idea who their victim is, and are no closer to knowing who could have possibly carried out this sickening crime.
The police will be trying to find the crime scene, because where the body is, the person has probably not been murdered there. They've just been parts of their body dumped there. You think, is there a serial killer on the loose? Is this gang related?
In the Stockport suburb of Brinnington, the community is waking up reeling after bin bags containing body parts were discovered in the local country park.
It's unusual to have a body dismembered. I can only think of 2 or 3 in my service in Greater Manchester.
Massive shock to everybody. You don't expect something like that to happen on your doorstep.
I've never heard anything like it before in my life. I couldn't believe it.
With the fears in the community growing, police specialists move in to examine the area.
There is an urgency taking place. It's like a huge juggernaut moving. They call it the golden hour. And it isn't an hour, it's the time that you're going to get the best evidence and the best opportunities to catch the killer and get main lines of inquiry. You will have police forensic teams sent out to the scene. You will have scientists looking at blood pattern analysis, looking at body deposition. The coroner for the area will be called out. So there's a whole group of people that are going to get involved in this from a very early stage.
News of the gruesome discovery has spread like wildfire, and local reporters are on the scene. But while forensic officers have the delicate task of trawling the crime scene, in a bid to identify the victim, the cause of death, and find clues to the killer, the media frenzy threatens to scupper the investigation from the off.
It's difficult for the police to keep ahead of the media frenzy. The media, they can be down and they can be knocking on doors in the area, so they want to get in there and get the story.
We sent a reporter down there, we spoke to the community, we spoke to neighbours, and then sent a photographer down there as well.
Photos from the scene are shared online, much to the concern of investigators.
When it got put on Facebook, that's how most people really did find out through that.
One of the big issues for investigators at a crime scene like this is media and social media. Everybody wants to take photographs. Everybody wants to pass that out. It can be around the world, and let's say it takes 3 days to identify that individual because there's got to be some scientific analysis. Well, the family might have been looking at this for days on end.
With the images spreading online, time is running out before news gets to the family.
There's a number of ways that the police can try and identify an individual. It's been perfected over the years. You've got fingerprints, you've got tattoos, marks, you've got dental, you've got DNA.
Now we're into the phase of looking at that body in detail for marks, for injuries, things like that. As you carry on and dissect to look for evidence, this is all about the detail of what that body is telling you.
After examining the remains, experts find a tattoo on one of the body parts. Could this be key to identifying the victim? Then, suddenly, 9 hours after the discovery, police receive a call, reporting a local resident missing. She is 46-year-old Yvonne McCann, known as Vonnie.
First thing, obviously, we realise that my sister's missing, and then the second thing we see on Facebook is that body parts have been found. So then, you're putting 2 and 2 together, aren't you?
Yvonne's sister, Helen, had been watching the police drama unfold before her eyes, unaware of the devastating impact it was about to have on her life.
I sat in my garden, looking at the police on the Vale, texting my sister. What's going on? It looks really bad. What's going on? Have you heard anything, Von? I didn't get any response, but I didn't think anything of it. Didn't even know she was missing.
Police request that one of Yvonne's family head to the scene to establish whether the victim is indeed their loved one or someone else entirely.
One of my nephews had been up to see a body part with a tattoo on it, so that proved that it was our Yvonne. I was shocked. I was empty. I had no feelings. I didn't have a tear in my eye. I couldn't cry. I think I was just in disbelief and shock. The way we lost her, the way she was found, the indignity of being found like that.
Early hours of the morning, we'd gone to bed and I got a phone call off my brother Charlie saying they think that's our Yvonne. And then my world fell apart. I was meant to protect her. Never knew, but I didn't know. Didn't know if there was anything wrong.
News that one of their own has been taken from them hits locals hard.
The whole community was subdued for a few weeks, to be honest, because everybody knew Vonnie. When you normally pass somebody and you say hi to, and then suddenly they're not there to say hi to. It was very, very tragic, very tragic.
Yvonne was well known to locals, having lived in Brinnington her whole life.
She was the youngest. She's the apple of my dad's eye, shall we say. She was a lovely girl. She's very mischievous. She was loud, she was bright, she had a great sense of humour, and she was good fun to be with.
She was a baby. She got away with stuff that me and my brother never did. I think they give up. After me and my brother, they must have given up. She used to drive me nutty when we got to the teenage stage, and she used to run after me all the time, want to hang about with me. She was just funny. I wish she could hang about with me now. But at the time, you don't think of that, do you?
During her teenage years, Yvonne found her first love with local lad Thomas McCann.
Yvonne and Thomas were definitely childhood sweethearts. She was about 14 when she met Tommy. From there, she was just always a Tom. Tom was the man.
She was 14 when she met him, and he was a few years older. They were both devoted to each other.
A lot of people meet at a young age, and sometimes your first love is just your first love, and you grow apart. Well, they never grew apart, they just grew stronger.
In 1996, 8 years into their relationship, Yvonne and Thomas tied the knot and started a family together.
Yvonne had 3 children with Thomas. They were married, and Thomas was a family man, hard-working man. He worked as a takeaway delivery driver in Stockport.
She loved him to bits, and he loved her. And they stayed together for all them years because there was a strong bond between them.
However, in 2012, after 24 years together, the relationship sadly came to an end. Yet Yvonne and Thomas remained friends and continued to live under the same roof. And eventually, Yvonne started dating again.
She moved on to a new relationship, and things appear to go well.
It's a nice bloke. He wanted to look after her. He made her feel good.
Life for Yvonne was good. But in March 2020, during the UK's period of lockdown, she moved back in with Thomas, who she was still on friendly terms with, in order to spend more time with her children. But in May 2020, just hours before a planned family barbecue, Yvonne texts family to say she's not coming, and then disappears, prompting her worried ex Thomas to take matters into his own hands.
At that point, Thomas reported that she was missing.
So what could possibly have led this well-known mother to be killed in such a horrific way?
When a body is dismembered, as an investigator, you've got to look at why it's been dismembered. So in this case, it's put in black bin liners and discarded on a park. It's not a case of trying to hide the body. That seems to me to be a knee-jerk reaction. This person doesn't know what they want to do with the body. This is not a criminal mastermind. This didn't look like some kind of serial killer. It's not gang-related where they've taken some time, like you see on some of the films. It is a quick, hurried deposit of some body parts.
Police now begin to suspect that whoever was responsible for this sickening crime was local to the area.
One of the things I thought about on this is there's some science behind where criminals operate. You, I, everybody else will have an area where we operate a daily business. We'll go to the same pubs, we'll go to the same shops, we'll meet the same friends at the same locations. And if you look at that, this is how criminals operate. Because they'll carry out the crime, they'll know places where they feel that they can deposit stuff and they can get away and not be compromised.
With Yvonne's home a mere stone's throw from where her body was found, attention falls on her inner circle.
You want to be with the families very quickly. One, for that reassurance. Well, secondly, to identify, have they got any idea of how it occurred, who could have done it, or was it within the family? You want to look at possible partners, friends, and people that they've had arguments with. That gives me a smaller pool of people to look at than trying to look at every gang member in Greater Manchester to see whether they've killed this woman.
Police begin by speaking to Yvonne's ex-husband, Thomas McCann. Thomas tells police that he last saw Yvonne on the Saturday morning, 2 days before her body was found. She left home to meet her new partner. Detectives speak to him, but he tells them that Yvonne never turned up. And after some delving into his whereabouts on the day, police rule the new partner out of the investigation. So where had Yvonne gone, and who would want her dead?
We didn't know if she'd just had an argument and gone to her boyfriend. We didn't know if she'd had an argument and gone to see a friend. You know what I mean? We didn't know.
As Yvonne's family prepare to say their goodbyes, suddenly police make an announcement.
A man has been arrested on suspicion of murder after a woman's body was found on Reddish Vale Country Park earlier this morning. The suspect has been taken into custody and detained for questioning.
It was a big shock to everybody. Nobody ever expected it at all.
It's been a matter of hours since human remains were found in Brinnington, and the body has been identified as that of 46-year-old mum, Yvonne McCann, and police have made an arrest.
One of my nephews knocked on his door and says, I've come to tell you my dad's been arrested for a murder.
Yvonne's ex-husband, 49-year-old Thomas McCann, is arrested and taken into police custody.
It's unfathomable to even think something like that could happen.
And as Yvonne's loved ones try to make sense of this shocking news, the community rallies together to show its support.
Our family's a very well-known family. We were born and bred Brinnington, so it affected everybody. It wasn't just a family. The estate. It affected the estate. People couldn't believe it, you know, and the response, the messages of people, and we had lockdown here. We had lockdown. And even in lockdown, there must have been 300 people on this front. And by the way, they was all trying their best to stay safe. But how can you stop 300 people to show their respects?
Despite the incredible support from the local community, the interrogation of Yvonne's ex-husband Thomas in connection with her death continues. So what had led to the arrest of the father of 3 of Yvonne's children? Police had recently learned that on Saturday morning, 2 days before Yvonne's body was found, there had been an argument between Yvonne and Thomas.
Yvonne and Thomas had argued in the morning. Neighbours had heard them arguing from about 9 o'clock.
They had an argument over a bag of chips, apparently.
She'd messaged her neighbour saying, you know, I've left a bag of frozen chips out. And that was that.
While in custody, Thomas tells police that after the argument over the frozen chips, Yvonne left their home to go and see her new partner. He then tells police the following day he was invited to a family barbecue.
Both him and Yvonne had been invited to a family barbecue by their son. And Yvonne, she'd messaged her son saying she wouldn't go. And there'd been an argument, and there was a few messages exchanged to do with that.
Yvonne's texts made it clear she didn't want to join Thomas at the barbecue, but he still went and stayed there until late in the evening.
He went to walk home. His daughter was helping him home because he was drunk. He passed out. And then that's when his daughter found the rings and, I believe, her mobile phone in his jacket pocket and began questioning where her mum was.
When confronted by his daughter, Thomas explains why he had Yvonne's possessions with him. And he gives a different story to the one he initially gave to the police.
After, you know, they'd had this argument, he said he met her on Hempshire Lane, which is in Stockport. He said he was going to give her a lift to the new partner's house, and during which she gave him her wedding rings for safekeeping, and that her phone had fallen into the footwell of his car, so he'd got those off her and then dropped her off at the new partner's house.
Her phone and rings were found in his pocket, so that heightens the sense of the SAO that this might be the individual we're looking at.
But the police still have no hard evidence to link Thomas to the crime.
I would be getting a search warrant for that property. You'd want to do a forensic examination in the home. One of the first things I'd be doing when I went in the house would be getting the bath and the plumbing looked at, because there'll be residue in the bath, there'll be residue in the pipes all the way down to the plumbing.
Officers searched Thomas and Yvonne's address, but forensics failed to find anything incriminating.
The house was spotless. from what I can gather, there was nothing found DNA-wise, there was nothing found there in the house that could prove that anybody had been killed in that house.
With no forensic evidence found at the address, police scoured local CCTV in an attempt to confirm whether Thomas had indeed travelled to Stockport to meet Yvonne on the Saturday.
Thomas gives an explanation of where he went between certain times. The teams will look at any CCTV to see whether they confirm his story. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to confirm or deny what he's saying.
And in a major breakthrough, police do uncover CCTV focusing on the street outside Yvonne and Thomas's home. But there's no sign of Yvonne leaving the address at any point. Despite Thomas's insistence to police that she'd walked out after the pair had argued over frozen chips.
It was 9 to 10 o'clock in the morning. He was seen going outside 4 times, moving things from his truck. Why he was doing that, we don't know. But then from about 10 o'clock, he was inside the house. And then he wasn't seen again until 4 o'clock.
Having spent the day indoors, Thomas McCann is seen leaving the address. But it's what he's seen carrying which really sparks police interest.
Thomas McCann left the house with bin bags.
Has Thomas been caught red-handed on CCTV carrying his ex-wife's remains? Further examination of the cameras shows Thomas returns home at 10:47 p.m. and heads out again just before 1 a.m. Shortly after leaving, his car is spotted on CCTV, parked at Bredbury Recycling Centre on the outskirts of Stockport. Police immediately dispatch officers to the scene.
It was at the recycling centre where more body parts were found.
The body parts are quickly identified as those of Yvonne McCann. Tools, including a Stanley knife, are also discovered at the scene. And Thomas is confronted with the damning evidence against him.
The officers have asked him the questions, he's given them an answer, they've gone away, they've come back and said, come on Thomas, that's not right. And here you are with a load of bin liners. What were you disposing of and where did you take him? People do become upset. A lot of them become angry because they're being found out. The story isn't right. The true craft of an interviewer is to get a person talking. If you can get that rapport going with that individual, you can get that little chink, you need to do this for your kids, you need to do this for her. It can turn it. And that's the true craft of turning somebody to talk to you.
There was 4 police interviews. At the 4th interview, when he was accompanied by a solicitor, he handed in a statement saying, I killed my wife, killed Yvonne, and disposed of her like garbage.
Thomas McCann is charged with the murder of his ex-wife, Yvonne McCann.
You think, it's something that doesn't happen to you. It's something that doesn't happen in your family. It's something that happens in America. Do you understand what I'm saying? It doesn't happen in Bridlington. Something like that doesn't happen on your doorstep, and it definitely doesn't happen to your sister.
But the question troubling the police is the motive. Why would Thomas murder his childhood sweetheart and mother of his children? 4 days since the human remains of Yvonne McCann were found in a park near the Stockport suburb of Brinnington, the community wakes to the shocking news that her ex-husband, 49-year-old delivery driver Thomas McCann, has confessed to her murder.
Yvonne and Thomas were childhood sweethearts, which I think makes it all the more surprising that this happened, really.
He's not only killed his wife, he's also mutilated her body as well. How anybody could do that, I'll never know.
Ten months after Yvonne's murder, Thomas appears at Manchester Crown Court to enter a formal plea. And a question the family are desperate to be answered is, why did Yvonne's once-loving husband end her life in such a brutal way? Could it really be over a bag of frozen chips?
This was the first that anyone had heard the proper details of the case, and it was the first time in court that the public would hear of the details of the case, so it was a very tense atmosphere. There was the family sat upstairs in the public gallery at the back, and then Thomas McCann in the dock. Thomas seemed really normal when I saw him in court. He was in a blue suit, he looked quite smart. You wouldn't look at him to think he'd done something like that, but you could say that about any murderers, couldn't you?
My side of the family, we weren't in the same courtroom because of COVID. We wasn't allowed. We was by camera.
I never went to court. I didn't want him to see me, because if he sees me show any emotion at all, he's won.
Thomas formally pleads guilty to the murder of his ex-wife, meaning he wouldn't have to give a defence revealing any motive for the killing.
I think Thomas pleaded guilty to stop his family from hearing all the gory details of what went on. That way he didn't have to tell his side of the story.
He knew that a few of the family were going to go to court, so he pleaded guilty, so there wasn't a court case. No one even had a say in the matter.
With Thomas pleading guilty to the crime, the family is denied hearing a motive for the murder. Could the answer lie in their 24-year relationship, which started when they met as teenagers?
I think she just fell head over heels with him. And I think, oh, this is a fairy tale. But it wasn't a fairy tale. Every couple of months we used to say, oh, is Thomas still at home? Going off with a woman he set eyes on. And she'd forgive him over and over and over again.
No matter what you said to her, Bonnie, she wouldn't believe it. My Thomas wouldn't do that. My Thomas wouldn't do that.
Over the years, the strain of the relationship took its toll on Yvonne, and she reached out to her brother and sister for help.
We all said, it'll never be no good. And she used to just fall to pieces. And we used to pick the pieces up. And in the end, you know, you can't keep saying, leave him, because it doesn't work. She had to be ready to do that.
My sister come round, our Yvonne, and said, you know, can you go and chuck him out, or can you go and have a word with him, can you sort it out? Now, I used to do that for her. Nothing ever involved violence, just strong talking. But you knew you was wasting your time, because within a day or two, he'd be back. So after maybe 10 years of actually trying to sort it out, I did say to her, Yvonne, you know, if you have trouble now, don't come to see me. When you want him gone, get him gone yourself.
Yvonne remained with Thomas. But as the years rolled on, she became more and more vulnerable.
She was a very mentally strong person, don't get me wrong, but, you know, as time went on, she got weaker and weaker as things went wrong. You know, dogs dying, parents dying. When my mum died, she believed a lot in ghosts, Yvonne, and afterlife. She used to go and see psychics and things like that. All of a sudden, all sorts of little things are moving around. You've got all your ornaments and things like that are moving around. Things are appearing from nowhere. And Yvonne's thinking, it's my mum and my dad, you know. And it wasn't my mum and dad. It was Thomas messing around with her head. I think that's exactly what he was doing.
As far as I'm aware, there was nothing physical. There was no physical abuse, but there was something. I think it was like mental torture to her.
Eventually, in 2012, Yvonne built up the strength to end her relationship with Thomas.
She'd had enough, and she wanted out. So she moved out, she moved away from the trouble.
Yvonne then met her new partner. But despite this, Thomas kept a tight grip on Yvonne.
Thomas wouldn't let go. You know, he'd threatened to jump off bridges, things like that. If you don't stay with me, I'm going to jump off this bridge. If you don't stay with me, I'm going to drink this bleach. If you don't stay with me, I'm going to take these tablets.
He was stood on the bridge numerous times near where she lived, threatening to jump. He went disappearing one time. He just disappeared. And then he turned up again. And I think it was constant mind games.
Despite recently moving in with her new partner, Yvonne, concerned over Thomas's well-being, felt she had no choice but to move back in with her ex-husband.
She went back, but she didn't want to be there. She wanted that fresh start. She wanted that fresh start, and she wasn't allowed that fresh start. She couldn't get rid of him. He wouldn't go. That is what happened towards the end.
In March 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic hit the UK, and a national lockdown meant that Yvonne and Thomas would be spending more time together than usual.
All of a sudden, be stuck in the same house together for months. It's going to have effects on some people. For our Yvonne to be spending all that time with Thomas, it wouldn't have, I don't think it would have been a good thing, you know.
2 months into lockdown, Yvonne pays her brother a visit, which tragically would be the last time he saw her.
The last time I spoke to her was the Thursday before she was murdered. She come round the house, and Yvonne was talking to my wife and saying, you know, he's going through my phone, and I wake up in the night or in the morning, he's sat at the end of the bed looking at me. She said, I don't feel comfortable. She knew herself that there was something not right with him, and in that conversation, she actually said to me that if I am ever found dead, it's him that's done it. And that was words out of her mouth the Thursday before the day she disappeared. If I am ever found dead, it's him that's done it.
Days later, on the morning of Saturday the 23rd of May 2020, a neighbour hears an argument coming from Yvonne and Thomas's home. They then receive a text from Yvonne saying the pair are arguing over frozen chips being left out. But was this really the motive for the murder?
All I can think is that he'd lost control of her. Maybe they had the conversation and she said, well, I am going. Maybe that's what triggered it off. Maybe she decided, right, Tom, I'm going, and he thought, well, you're not. You're not going anywhere. Makes more sense to me than arguing over a bag of chips. Certainly does. He's the only one that knows.
The motive may be unclear, but police discover what Thomas did next. And it's truly horrifying.
He strangled Yvonne, and then, we believe using a Stanley knife and some lopping shears, he dismembered her body. I think that's what took so long for him to do. That's why he was in the house for so long.
Police also discover that after killing his ex-wife, Thomas had used Yvonne's phone pretending to be her.
So, whilst he was dismembering Yvonne's body, he was messaging the family using her phone, messaging himself using her phone and replying. He was apologising to her about the bag of frozen chips, telling her he still loved her. All this was carried on whilst he was committing that act.
So he's trying to manufacture a narrative there, so that when he's asked questions, say, oh, well, I was speaking to her at these times, and then these are the messages, and if she's died before then, well, she died afterwards.
The court hears that in a prepared statement, McCann had told police he had strangled Yvonne and cut her body up in order to make her go away. He then disposed of her body parts and the tools he had used, and then shockingly joined his family for a barbecue that his son had invited both parents to attend the next day.
He didn't show any remorse. How can that be remorseful? Just carrying on after he murdered and dismantled my sister. Carrying on like he'd done nothing. Or just go and have a barbecue with my family. Just carry on pretending I'm my wife on her phone. No, that wasn't sorry. He can say sorry as much as he wanted in court to the family. That shows me he was never sorry.
The court is also told that only 50% of Yvonne's body has ever been found.
Other parts of the body were still not found. They've not found the head.
The family will never get complete closure in that aspect until she's returned as a whole. There's always that part of my loved one is still out there. And hopefully, one day it'll be found.
On the 30th of March 2021, the judge imposes his sentence. Thomas McCann is sentenced to life in prison, with a minimum of 12 years behind bars.
My side of the family just got up and walked out. I was gobsmacked.
There was a number of things which reduced the sentence. Part of it was reduced due to his guilty plea. Another part was due to mitigating circumstances such as his mental state at the time. He had mental health issues. There was alcohol abuse there. From what we know, he suffered with horrendous abuse as a child in every way imaginable. But you'd think a brutal murder like that, the way he disposed of the body, You know, people who've murdered people in the past have got much higher sentences for doing a lot less than what he did.
What's that message about 12 years sent out to other people that are thinking of getting rid of the wife because they've had enough of her? Eh? Can't afford to divorce her, can't do this, I'll murder her. I'll get 12 years. It's disgusting, absolutely disgusting. They should be ashamed of themselves.
I could never forgive him. Never. He took my sister away. He took a part of me away with him that day, and a part of my brother as well.
I could never forgive him for what he's done to not just me, the family. It's what he's done to everybody. It's up to him now to do something with himself. It's up to him to realise what he's done and let him do his time. But when it comes to forgiveness, no, I can't forgive the man. No, I can't. No.
With Thomas now behind bars, the community of Brinnington struggles to come to terms with the horror of what happened to Yvonne.
The neighbours, everybody, even now still feel it. Because obviously, you know, children left without a mum. And it's just thrown their life, probably for the rest of their lives, into turmoil. Very, very sad. Very sad.
And Yvonne's elder siblings are slowly coming to terms with a life without her.
The way of moving on is to keep yourself busy. Don't let things get into your head. We're not going to let him destroy my life, my wife's life, my family's life, my kids' life. We're not going to let him do it. We're going to get on and we're going to be even stronger. And that's how you get through things.
I'll never be able to understand why she's no longer here. The nightmares, the constant lack of sleep since wondering who she was shouting for. While he was strangling her, she'd have been shouting for somebody to help her. And we didn't, and we couldn't because we didn't know.
To get a pizza. 2 boys have died after being stabbed in Bristol last night.
It's heartbreaking. Heartbreaking.
His dressing gown is on the bed, and you could see where he got undressed to go out that night. And I just so wish he just put his pyjamas back on and just stayed in.
This is an attack on 2 children, committed by children. In all my years as a police officer, one of the most horrific weapons I've seen. This is an investigation that will live with me and my colleagues for the rest of our careers and our lives.
What we are told is that one of the boys was living on this street, so it really has hit people here hard.
I managed to sit down in front of him, and he knew I was there. He knew I was with him. But he was so pale. He was very pale, and he just kept saying to me, "Mum, I want to go to sleep."
Try and keep the kids. You try and keep your child safe. But obviously, someone, took him.
Because Thomas here and a kiss, we're ready to...
Mason was just like the sweetest kid ever. He would always make me laugh. He's just like a silly kid. We'd do like prank videos together. Like just typical brother-sister relationship. But he took it always the next level, and he would always have to try and go a step ahead and try to like make my day just full of fun. We always grew up close. From the moment he was born, I was like infatuated by him. I was obsessed with him. I wouldn't want to stop hugging him. And he was just really sweet and so pure, and his heart is so kind. And it's really rare in life to come across people that are that nice and loving. We had a bond that I can't even explain. Max was 16. He was a great character. He was always full of laughs, joking. It's very rare he was angry or annoyed, and even if he was, after 5 minutes, he would be back to his normal self. He was loud,
clumsy, very tall, but he was also very kind, gentle, very loving, very respectful. He was just a beautiful kid. He was definitely a mama's boy. If he was sat on the sofa, he would sit on the arm of the chair and put his legs over me. And he's 6'2", so trying to sit on my lap, that's what I miss about him a lot, because it was the closeness. He would give me a cuddle, never embarrassed to give me a cuddle. I loved him to bits, I really did. He was my boy.
Max and Mason grew up in South Bristol in Knoll West. They were best friends, going through nursery, juniors and secondary school together.
They both joined us when they were in year 7. That was back in September 2018. Mason, he gave his all in his subject areas and particularly enjoyed art, where he was very, very talented. And he enjoyed his food technology. Then Max loved his football, and he was more into his maths. And he had a flair for maths. I know I taught him.
They were just a good team. You know, like Mason was the quiet one, Max was the loud one. So I think Max brought Mason out of his shell. It was just a nice friendship.
Both had loving families. Max was the youngest of 4 and Mason the youngest of 3. During the pandemic, Mason's dad, Shane, died from COVID. Mason was just 13.
Me and his dad was very protective of Mason. He never went out Mason. He was just PlayStation mad. I think Mason was playing the PlayStation when he was 3. But I thought, well, if he's in the house, he's safe.
Always on the PlayStation, always chatting to each other on the PlayStation. What I would give to hear his voice now, shouting down the PlayStation.
Nikki was going on a rare night out with friends. Before she left, she tried hard to persuade Mason to order a takeaway.
If he'd have just said to me, I go, all right, Matt, I'll get that McDonald's now, I think this would have happened, and this is why I wish Mason, Mason, I wish that you would have just, that poxy PlayStation, instead of saying, oh, I'm on a game, I can't play, I'm busy. If you'd have just said, oh, Teresa, hang on a minute, I'm going to get an Uber, I'm going to get McDonald's delivered, I'll be back online in half an hour. If he'd have only just said that, this would have happened, because he wouldn't have got out. This is the thing, he wouldn't have got out.
Just a few streets away, Max was also at home with his mum and her partner.
Driver come down to go and get a drink of water, and he passed him on the stairs at about 20 to 11, and he said he was coming down to feed the cats. So he came down, fed the cats, and then he was in his dressing gown, so he wasn't even dressed.
By now, Mason was hungry, so he messaged his best friend. It was around 11 when Max sneaked out.
That's the saddest thing. When he left the house, he locked the dog in the kitchen, and he took his key with him. He took his phone. He didn't know that would be the last time he'd walk out the house.
Mason was quick to answer the door, every second caught on the CCTV cameras outside his home. There's a car in the street. It passes them. At the wheel, 45-year-old Anthony Snook, with 4 teenage passengers armed with a sword and machetes.
So I think weapons is probably a more accurate version of knives, because these weapons are, in fact, one of them is a sword. It's a sword that is intended to cause serious harm. It's a horrific weapon. Probably in all my years as a police officer, one of the most horrific weapons I've seen.
Max and Mason don't notice the car, but everyone in it is watching them. It makes a U-turn at the end of the street and comes back. Suddenly, the 4 teenagers jump out and chase the best friends.
The boys ran for their lives, and sadly in doing so, suffered those injuries. Chills me to think of it. Horror, shock, fright. They must have been absolutely petrified.
In the panic, the best friends become separated, ending up on different sides of the street. Mason is on the far side, seen running past the white van. It was 2-on-1, 17-year-old Riley Tolliver and a 14-year-old attacking him. Mason is trying to get home, but collapses just meters from his front door. 16-year-old Cody Westcott and a 15-year-old chase Max. Cody stabs Max, but the other boy won't stop, chasing him around this white car. Max manages to get away, but it's too late. He's already dying. The attack lasted just 33 seconds.
I pull up outside my house, and Max's friend was shouting out, "Leanne, Max has been stabbed." And I said, "No, he's not, he's in bed." And then it hit me. So I was screaming for the door, someone to open the door, and they literally drove me straight down. I said, "Max, Mum's here." He heard me, he opened up his eyes. He said, "Mum, I just want to go to sleep." It was nice to know that he knew that I was there, even though that he was dying, and I knew he was because I could tell. He was just so pale. He was cold.
Well, I had a phone call from Mason's phone, and it was the police on the phone. And I thought, is this some sort of wind-up? You know, it's like, oh, this is, the police, and son's been injured. The whole road was sort of taped up, so I had to get through a lot of tape, and it was just lights everywhere. It was all a bit of a blur. It was just a bit... Wait, just... No one told you nothing?
I was just going to bed, and Nikki phoned up, and all she said at the time was, "Mason's been stabbed." That was all. He's at the BRI.
I think one of Mason's friend at school, his mum, she gave me a lift to the BRI, which was the same hospital that Shane died in as well.
I walked into this room not knowing where I was going, and there was quite a few doctors, nurses, police in this room, around a bed.
I kept saying, "What's going on?" and, "Oh, we'll get you an update." So I was expecting them to say, "Oh, we're going to do this, we'll do that, and do this and that." Well, they didn't. They sort of stared at you, Mason's mum. I said, "Yeah," and they said, "We're so sorry." And that was basically it. It was all walked out. Really?
I said I wanted to see him. So they let me go in and see him. And I was just in shock. I couldn't cry. I just gave him a kiss and gave him a cuddle. And that was it, really. I went into, I suppose, shock.
So it was literally when we got to there, they allowed us to go and see him. They were still working on him when I walked in the room. And then they stopped. That was hard. It was so hard.
By the early hours of Sunday morning, at two different hospitals across the city, Max and Mason had both died, within 15 minutes of each other.
Remember it vividly. It was a Sunday morning, or it was the Sunday morning. It was around about 8:30, and my vice principal called me, and she said, "Vic, I've just got off the phone to Leanne," which is Max's mum, and all she could say was, "He's gone."
We come home, and the whole road is cornered off, so you can't get in, you can't get down the road. And I just saw my brother's coat in the middle of the road, and I knew it was his coat because it was his favourite coat, but it was all like ripped up. And I ran straight to his room to see if he was there, because I was like, yeah, he's definitely there. And then I opened the door and he wasn't there. It's like, I was just like, I couldn't figure out why he wasn't there.
Best friends, innocent schoolboys murdered on their doorstep. But why? It was all about revenge. An hour earlier that same Saturday night, there was an attack on a house 3 miles away. Bricks had been thrown. The woman inside, mother, was hurt and had to go to hospital. Her son was Cody Westcott. He wanted revenge. He gathered his cousin, Riley Tolliver, and 2 other boys who he can't name because of legal reasons. Anthony Snook was friends with Westcott's mum. He was their chauffeur. Convinced people from Max and Mason's neighbourhood were behind the attack, Snook drove them across the city, from Hartcliffe to Knoll West.
Every day I go through what were they thinking, looking at their actions, looking at the way they drove around Knoll West, trying to find a victim. It's obvious that they were intent on committing serious harm to anybody they could get their hands on. And I think, they armed themselves with weapons. They hunted around the estate to find, sadly, those 2 boys. And they attacked them for no reason whatsoever.
After they stabbed the boys, they jumped back in the car, tyres screeching, leaving Max and Mason dying in the street. Within minutes, they're home, but panic. Getting rid of evidence, a fire is lit and they burn their clothes, trying to hide the knives before going out for food.
And chillingly for me, what we do now is they even stopped off at McDonald's after attacking these 2 boys. I think it speaks volumes, really. 2 beautiful boys lost their lives and they went to McDonald's for an early morning breakfast.
The police wasted no time trying to find the killers.
So this attack happened at 11:15. It was a very, very quick attack, 33 seconds in total. The first call to the police came 4 minutes after. Within 10 minutes, we'd identified that vehicle. Within 59 minutes, Anthony Snook was in custody. Once we had Anthony Snook, we had a foundation for the investigation, and we just built from there.
Mr. Snook, can you just listen to my colleague a minute?
Hello. Anthony Snook has just been arrested.
So I'll be placing you under arrest for murder, 1 count of murder, so you don't have to say anything.
But en route to the police station, they get a call from the hospital. Mason has died.
So the circumstances are still the same. Your vehicle was linked to where the stabbing has taken place, and subsequently someone has been murdered, all right?
Then a second call. Max has now died.
Before we get out, you're further arrested for another count of murder, okay? So you don't have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention when...
Snook admitted he was the driver, said he had nothing to do with their plan.
So I mean, they're screaming in the car at me. Stop. Didn't know they were going to jump out. Didn't know any weapons was in the car. I had no intentions. No, I didn't have any idea of it. And I was abused that they put me in that situation.
The 4 teenagers run down to the police. We didn't get to interview Anthony Snook until sometime on Sunday afternoon, but he wasn't forthcoming and giving us any names. By the help and support of the community, we were able to narrow it down quite quickly. We were able to identify certainly 2 of the individuals, and then good old-fashioned detective work led to the other 2.
Today, 2 boys aged 15 and 16 were arrested on suspicion of murder.
They knew we were coming, and we weren't going to stop until they were in custody. A number of doors, countless doors, a number of addresses were searched, and we were simply chasing them down until we found them.
Right, listen fella then, alright, so time is...
4 days after Snook was arrested, there was a knock on the door for the oldest boy, Riley Tolliver.
Just listen, alright?
Yes, what's that?
So,
by the end of the week, all their killers had been caught.
Just received naming you along with others as being responsible for the murders of Max Dixon and Mason Wrist on Saturday 20.
This is an attack on 2 boys that were unconnected, 2 children that were unconnected, committed by children. In my police service, thankfully I'll never have an investigation like this to investigate again.
People gathered and roads were closed as hundreds of balloons were released in memory of 16-year-old Max and 15-year-old Mason.
Bristol was a city in shock. In the days after their deaths, there were spontaneous gatherings on the streets.
This world is never ever going to be the same without them.
4 days on, Max's mum, Leanne, addressed the crowds.
And I don't want anybody else to go through what I've going through and what Mason's mum is going through. but I just wanted to say thank you, and I do appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. Thank you, and I'm just... Thank you.
It's that big word, the big M word, murder. They were taken from us. We wasn't prepared for it, mentally prepared, which is very, very difficult.
At the boys' school, the pupils held a spontaneous vigil.
That period after the deaths of the boys, I have to say, have been some of the most challenging periods I've had to deal with. It's one of those things that you're never trained to know how to cope with. Nobody prepares you to say, when you're standing up to lead an assembly, to share the awful news that 2 of our young people have been tragically murdered, and you're partway through a message and you're overcome with emotion.
Well, Ashton Gates is paying tribute to Max Dixon and Mason Rist.
And Bristol City and Leeds United football fans came together to remember them. On the 9th of October, the trial began. All 5 were charged with 2 counts of murder. 3 of the group were children. The prosecution said the group were on a joint mission, acting as a pack. When they saw Max and Mason, they thought they'd spotted those responsible for the earlier attack on the house, or at the very least, people connected with it.
I don't know what was in their heads. The boys were completely not connected to any offences that took place in the Hartcliffe area. So to my mind, absolutely a case of mistaken identity.
The court heard how Mason, who was stabbed once in the back and then in his chest, suffered unsurvivable injuries. Max was stabbed once in his abdomen and had instant severe blood loss.
I'm a human being, I'm a parent. These were 2 boys going about their business. They were boys just out being friends. But these boys were cut down in the prime of their lives, and that's a horrible word to use. But they were attacked with swords for no reason whatsoever.
After a trial lasting 5.5 weeks and 3 days of discussions, the jury came back.
Today at 6, 4 teenagers and a man in his 40s are convicted of murdering 2 teenagers in a case of mistaken identity.
Max's mum Leanne had her head in her hands as the verdicts were given. Mason's mum Nikki cheered as the first one was read out.
We thank the jury for having to see what we've seen, and we thank them for coming to the correct decision as far as we as a family are concerned.
There are no words to express how thankful I am to everyone. I will be forever grateful to them. It's just, I wish we didn't have to be here today, but we've got some sort of justice for our boys. So thank you, everybody.
Snook was first to be sentenced on the 19th of November. Today, Snook remained emotionless as the Honourable Mrs. Justice May sentenced him to a minimum of 38 years in prison.
He was the car driver. He could have made decisions that would have effectively stopped this from happening. He drove those 4 individuals, all armed, trying to find victims. For me, he is so influential on the decisions made. He was the adult that could have changed the course of this incident.
Snook will probably die in prison.
It doesn't matter if someone gets 50 years, 100 years, or 2 years. It's not going to bring it back. These people have still got their life. I think, personally, you do a life is a life, which means that you, whatever age you are, you've committed that murder, you go in there and you die in prison. You don't ever come out.
On December the 19th, the rest of the group were back in front of the judge. Riley Tolliver had turned 18, Cody Westcott now 17, and a 16 and a 15-year-old. We can't reveal their identities because they were too young, but the judge did decide to name Westcott as he was the main ringleader.
How scared Mason and Max would have been being chased by 4 boys they didn't know. Boys who were carrying those long knives. Mason being stabbed and dying outside his front door where his mother has to walk every day.
The 16-year-old was told he must serve a minimum of 18 years, the 15-year-old at least 15 years, Riley Tolliver and Cody Westcott a minimum of 23.
Nothing can bring Mason and Max back. No sentence which this court passes can lessen the sense of loss and grief caused to their families, nor does it represent in any way the value of those young lives.
Cody Westcott waved to Max and Mason's families as he was led away.
Today, Riley Tolliver, Cody Westcott, and 2 other teenage boys were sentenced to 2 life imprisonments each. Collectively, with Anthony Snook, they were serving a total of 118 years. This is a desperate case with no winners. 4 children will spend the rest of their juvenile life and most of their adult life in prison. And 2 families will not celebrate Christmas with their sons.
I'm still very angry with them, but I still think they're lucky because they're alive. Their family can get to see them. They can get to talk to them. I've not got that privilege anymore. It's justice. That's what they deserve. But it still doesn't take away my pain.
I don't know life about him, so now I'm in like new territory. I go into his room and he's got like a dressing gown that smells just like him. Like his headset is there, his like controller is there, he loved playing his game, and life just feels unfinished. It feels like it's not done yet for him. It's still like that's not it for him. Like he's gonna come back and play his game, do his coursework, and it's like he's on holiday somewhere, like he's had a break and he's gone somewhere, he's coming back.
I don't think there was one person in this building that wasn't affected by it, even when you just think 2 members of our team aren't here anymore. And it doesn't matter whether or not you're a year 7 who potentially has never met Max and Mason or come across them. They're still part of Team John Williams, and we're 2 players down.
I talk to him sometimes. Yeah. I say, what do you think of this, mate? Of course you think of him, you know. You're never going to forget him, are you? Ever.
I would rather have had they took my life, because if they said to me tomorrow, sorry, no, you need to go, Nikki, and we need to bring Mason back, I'd have to go.
It's hard. It's very hard. I don't feel like I'm a mum. I feel like I've lost being a mum, if you know what I mean. I'm trying to learn who I'm going to become, because obviously that person before Max is gone. I'm learning to live without Max. I'm learning to take one day at a time. I think the only good thing is, because Max was such a great character, full of life, and we had that bond, I know that Max would want me to get up every day and go out and make a good life for myself and enjoy it, and not sit and dwell on what's happened. I'm lucky I had 16 really good years with him, and I loved him very much, and I still love him very much.
I love no reason to be loved each other. none of them reach the shore. Despite all the obstacles, life is so long. Years still pass like the ocean, even though it is wide. Clouds still fly far away.